Hello and welcome to Unbounded Growth, a podcast that challenges you to grow and become a better version of yourself. My name is Mark Allen, and together with my friend Adam, we share thoughts and ideas from the books that we read and how they enhance our personal growth and development. We also host other readers and leaders. We learn from their experiences through our discussions. Our episodes air every Tuesday at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for listening in, and let's grow together. Unbounded Growth. Hello and welcome back to Unbounded Growth. Happy Tuesday. My name is Mark Allen. Here my friend and co-host Adam Shebindo. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're excited to have you all back. It's episode 11 of our second season. We've been having a blast. We finished up last week with Atomic Habit. It's a book that took us a little longer than we thought, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's actually funny. It's supposed to be, when you think about atomic, it's supposed to be small, but it's not really small.
Exactly, it's not as small.
This is big because it's the basic steps that could actually transform someone's life. It can reach to even deeper than just your spirit. It can even go deeper to your soul.
Absolutely.
So it's something that could actually change you for good.
That's crazy true, and which kind of pushes me to the question of the week. I know it's been a while since we asked that question, but our question of the week this week is: what are you doing differently to ensure that you have positive results this year? This is one thing I've found about New Year's resolutions and all that. They usually last about 7 days after the New Year starts. And if you are not careful about what you promise yourself to do, you kind of fall into this everyday routine of like, oh, it's a new year, you're excited, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then 7 days later, after you've made your commitment, those year resolutions don't mean anything if you don't act on them. So the question is, what are you currently doing to ensure that you have positive results this year? And today we are starting with a new book. A new concept. Is probably something that we've mentioned here and there on the podcast here, but it says it as well in our motto to inspire growth and to raise leaders. And today we are starting with this new book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. It's a book that I would say I have a kind of a personal experience or story with it. When I was preparing for the podcast since last weekend, and I started reading again this book, and I was just going through it. I was telling Adam before we started recording here that I had so many flashback moments with this book. I'd been reading books from John Maxwell since I started learning English back in 2011. And then I came across the 5 Levels of Leadership 5 years later, like in 2016. And there's just something about this book. No wonder it's one of his most requested book ever. Every time, like he always says it, every time he goes on a speaking engagement and he's asking people, what do you want me to talk about? Everybody's always like the 5 levels of leadership, because I think he broke leadership down to such a level that was so simple to understand, but also that kind of helped me understand some of the bigger issues that we have in a continent like Africa, or even here in America, or all around the world. The leadership, I don't think, is an African problem, or is to me, it's more of a global problem. So a few questions that we try to answer while we dive into this book. We try to understand, like, who's a leader? What makes a person a leader? We also look into a little bit, how does that journey start? When they say, okay, now you're a leader, how does that journey start? Which was actually the case for me. I think I was 15 or 16 years old when I joined a community of Christian back home. I think it's a little bit famous, much famous home than it is here, much known. It's called the Fugospel Businessman Fellowship International, but people in Goma, Eastern Congo, just call it Fugospel,
Yeah.
and I joined that community. My late dad was the president of the North Kivu, province and stuff like that. When I joined, they put me into this office like 3 months, 4 months into it. And I remember my mentor, Beli Ramazani, told me, oh, now you're a leader. It was weird. It was weird. It felt like, I don't know why, but it felt like it was kind of the first time I ever heard the word leader. or even leadership to come with. So it started troubling me. I was like, okay, what does this word mean? What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to have leadership? And why
You know,
is this
actually,
guy of all the people
something
inviting me
funny.
here? Go ahead.
Actually, something funny about Full Gospel.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know, but Kim Kardashian great grandfather
Hmm.
is actually the co-founder of
Really?
the Full Gospel Businessman International.
That's amazing.
I found that
Wow.
out, and I was like, oh, whoa, Kim Kardashian great grandfather. I was like, wow, interesting. But yeah, you can carry on.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the Full Spell, I'll say that community really changed me. It changed my life. It changed my way of looking at things, and in so many ways, just encountering the word leadership, I believe, kind of gave me a different purpose for my life. I just felt like, before I came across the word leadership, I was that one wandering kid not knowing what exactly I'll do. Like, give me beans and rice and sugar on it, and I'll be good for the rest of my life. But when I came to start understanding leadership, I was like, what is this? How can I learn more about this? And the funny story, the first time I bought a book on leadership, I didn't know John Maxwell. I didn't know anything about him. I was literally walking the streets in Kampala, and Kampala, Uganda, the capital city of Uganda. And then they usually sell books on the street, which is was kind of new to me. And those books were crazy cheap. You find some books for like $2, $3, and these are books that have sold millions, and they're literally on the street for $2, $3. And because I had some money in my pocket, and which is funny, some days I'll literally decide to walk so I can go buy a book. So I bought the book, and all he said was, I just saw leadership. I was learning English. I didn't understand much of it, but the title of the book was Leadership Gold, and it was one of those devotional books that John Maxwell wrote. And you're supposed to read like a page a day, and then at the end of the week you summarize and all that. I went through that book within like a week. I was just so much into it, and then I started reading it slowly. And the more I read about leadership, the more I started being truly attracted to leadership. And in this book, in this journey, in this episode, we see like, how do you determine your level of leadership? How can you grow in your leadership? And then the most famous question about leadership: does title matter? Does it matter if people call you the leader? Because I think that's one mistake a lot of us make, and a lot of people that want to get into leadership make, is thinking that, oh, I want to be called this person, influencer. I want to be that person. But what does that mean? What does that entitle? What does that even entails? I meant, what does that even mean to you to be a leader? So those are a few questions that we try to answer through this series. We probably have a few guests as well with us here to just talk about leadership. There's something I'll say later on, but I want to say it right now, is that if leadership is like swimming, right? You can read all about swimming, you can watch all about swimming. If you've never been in water, you can swim. I can tell you
Yeah,
that I have
that's a really
firsthand
good one.
I have firsthand experience, man. With swimming, I tried to watch YouTube videos, and people were just moving their legs like this and they were floating. I went into the pool, I moved my legs, and I went all the way to the bottom. I was like, okay, this doesn't work. And it definitely does work the same way in leadership. All right, if it's your first time here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button or the follow on whatever platform you're listening in. And if you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you can be notified about all our future episodes. And if you want to support us, we are always on www.theunboundedgrowth.com, and you can always set up your monthly donation or one-time donation. Anything that comes our way, we truly be appreciated. All right, Adam, the 5 levels of leadership.
Yeah, this is really exciting to me, actually, because also when I read the 5 levels of leadership, I was going through a tough transition time in terms of my own personal leadership level or skills as a leader. I remember reading this book after I read about The Art of Influence by Jim Rohn and Chris Widener, and we reviewed that book here during, I think it was a second or third episode of Unbounded Growth.
That's right.
And yeah, so I tried to just see where Jim Rohn finished and where John Maxwell started. Of course, I had my journey of leadership started way early as a I'm the firstborn of so many kids,
Mhm.
a huge family. So um, a lot of firstborn, maybe in the Western culture, they get away with it.
Mhm.
Just say, yeah, everybody's growing, everybody's figuring out their life and so on. You don't really feel a lot responsible. It's very opposite from the side of the world where we are from.
Mm.
When you're the firstborn in a family, it's actually almost like a job, it's a title.
I mean, you become pretty
So,
much the father to all your siblings.
yeah,
It's like all the
pretty much.
responsibility.
You're the
And
one who helped them with homework. You are
even
the
even
one
to go
who,
further, Adam, like it's usually like if you make it in life, especially if your parents were struggling, they will focus on you so that you can take care of the
yeah,
rest. Mhm.
exactly. That's the
Mhm.
whole goal. That's
Mhm.
pretty much the whole goal. So, especially if you are a man, in not to be any discriminatory of gender, but
Mhm.
that is how things worked in Africa, especially during the time when we were growing up. It's like, especially when you're a man,
Mhm.
you are assumed a certain leadership position already
Yeah.
by nature.
Mhm.
So you learn early, your father teach you early a few of the tricks. How does he lead the family?
Mhm.
And you start becoming mostly like your dad, and he influenced a lot of you create influence among your peers
Mhm.
to a point where not your peers, but among your siblings,
Mhm.
to a point where your siblings do not call you by your name. There's a specific name to call big brother when
Yep.
you are the very firstborn.
Mhm.
And it's funny, like it would, now that I'm like, more Americanized and I don't look my sibling to say, but some of my siblings still
Mhm.
call me the way they used to call me when I was little, when I was with them,
Mhm.
when we were growing up.
Mhm.
And just that as an example of it's when I first experienced the fact of leadership. When
Mhm.
we're going out with my siblings, I'm the one who have to make sure they come home safe early,
Yep.
early and safe back home.
Mhm.
And it's just as I was saying that, yeah, it's something I got initiated to at a very early stage
Mhm.
when it comes to leadership. And I remember by the time I was 9 years old,
Mhm.
I was leading a soccer team
Wow.
of all the kids in my neighborhood. That
Mhm.
was, I have a picture. I have a picture that my mom sent me a picture of my brother and I. We were at the stadium, my younger brother. We're in the middle of the stadium. Now, African stadiums are not like, fancy like in America.
Nah, it's
African
just a stadium,
stadiums are
man.
wild. Now imagine a 9 year old out there in the stadium, and a bunch of grown-ups were all around me, and most people I hang out with, they were always older than me.
Mhm. Same here.
Unfortunately, I don't know if
And I
it's
think that's
unfortunate or whatever,
I don't know.
but
Like I think 90% of my friends, like at some point, even 100% of them were older than me, like
yeah,
way older than
actually,
me,
my entire
and
high
still
school
till
class,
now. Yeah.
yeah, my
Mhm.
entire high school class was pretty much people way, like no way, but they were mostly older than me.
Mm.
And yeah, then even in the neighborhood, people I was friends with, people I was leading, actually. I started leading. And this one started off as a position that I got.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I started sharing ideas, bring initiatives, and so on,
Mm.
to a point where, yeah, they used to they would start calling me preso, which means like,
President.
president
Yeah.
or whatever, leader or stuff. So I was 9 year old when I was initiated to this leadership, and I started growing. And everywhere I go, I have a father who always tell us that, yeah, you're supposed to be ahead, you're supposed to be on top, you're supposed to be this, you're supposed to lead, you're supposed to give the ideas. And it was the environment. If anything, in my entire family that were being pumped by my dad
Mhm.
was to be leaders
Mm.
in everywhere we go, in everything that we do. Of course, at that time, as Mark mentioned that he did not know leadership, I didn't know. I was just taking it as I
Doing.
was going.
Yep.
So and I guess I don't know if it's something I was born with, and that's why it would be really great to have like an expert on here
Mm.
who would really open up this conversation with. I don't know if it's that or if it was just the environment, because I grew up in a military family. My dad was a military leader. He is still a military leader.
Mhm.
So he gives orders, people obey him. He has so much influence, and even behind his back, people don't do what he doesn't want them to do, and stuff like that. So then I probably used to, probably I just rub it off of watching him and basically see some, suppose as an African firstborn, I'm supposed to be assuming his position when he's not there and so on. Maybe it was that, or maybe I was just naturally born with the instinct to lead other people without any fear, without any complex. It's just, if somebody gonna volunteer, somebody gonna be on the front row, I was always the guy who's gonna be on the front row when nobody wanna take the seat. So, and yeah, but I didn't understand really the growth of what it's required to be a leader or who you are as a leader until I came across John Maxwell's book. Of course, I was even leading my own company, and I was still not grasping fully what it takes to be a leader. And yeah, so just kind of to push into the introduction, into how he even starts the book, and he started the book by saying you can learn practical leadership tools. Like basically here, he's as Mark said, he break it down. Not just he break it down, he opens up leadership to anybody who would listen.
And that's the beauty of it, which I wanted to mention just before you finish your story about, being born or being raised as a leader. Growing up with people that were much older than me and were doing things that I wasn't doing yet, kind of put me in a position where I always followed their lead, right? And then when the coin turned around and I flipped over to people, a generation that was much younger than me, they always kind of looked up to me to tell them what exactly they needed to do and how exactly we needed to run things. It begs the question of, are leaders born or leaders raised? I think there's a little bit of truth in both of them. In another book by John Maxwell, I think the 21 most important minutes in a leader's day, which is pretty much a replica of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, but the 21 most important minutes in a leader's day deals more about leadership in a biblical perspective. It talks about, it's pretty much a devotional book that you read, a page or 2 pages a day, and it gives it in the actual leadership. When he talks about Moses, the Prince of Egypt, the guy that parted the seas, for people who are not too familiar with biblical stories, he says that Moses wasn't a born leader. But then, when you read the story of Moses and when you see the story of Moses, he was one of the most accomplished leaders in the history of the Bible. My point is, not only the Bible, the world itself at that time. My point is, it doesn't matter if you are naturally born with the instinct of leadership or if you learn leadership on your way. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey, you can learn and improve on it. And this is the same thing that, as Adam was saying, another thing that John Maxwell says here in the introduction is that leadership is not a position, it's a process. It's not something that, when I got into leadership, it was like, oh, now I'm a leader. Now, I'll settle down. I'll speak and people will listen. Leadership does not work that way. It's not a process. It's not a position. It's not somewhere you get and then you sit and you settle. No, it's a place where you grow and you continue to grow every day. And the day you stop growing, and when he talks about these levels, it pretty much says that if you stop doing things on one level, either you do not go past that level, or you may actually fall back to a level that's lower if you stop doing the things that are required for that level. Now, there's another question that always also brings a lot of confusion, is the difference between leadership and management. Now, the explanation that John Maxwell gives here, and I think it's a clear, straight to the point explanation that I've adopted for years. He said that management consists of keeping things the way they are for the most part. So when you have a manager of a store, you have someone who's managing a company. The goal is pretty much to keep things in a status quo. Just make sure that the bridge are not burning. You make sure that the server is running. You make sure that nobody dies in the company and everything stays the way it is. But now, when it comes to leadership, it deals with people, defined by John Maxwell, dynamics, which are continually changing. So management for the most part, it's about keeping things the way they are. But leadership is more about improving things. How can we improve this? How can we make this better? And that's where it comes to leadership. I'll give one
Yeah.
example here, Adam, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll let you go with this. And just maybe to give a shout out to some of the friends that I recently met at the biggest African and African American Expo was happening here in Dallas last year. A good friend of mine, Emmanuel Kolumbata, leads that organization, and during that expo, I met this couple, Pastor Bright and his wife Millicent. They're from Ghana, and they were selling me this tea. Adam knows that I love tea. I really love tea. I don't know if I can live without tea. So they're telling me, "Oh, do you mind checking our tea?" So they gave me this bag of tea, and for those of you on YouTube, of course, can see it if you can see it any, but it's a tea made of turkey berry, right? And I think their website, if you want to learn more about their story, I'll tell just a little bit of their story. But their website, I think, is www.achieverfoods.net. Now, why was I so attracted and impressed by this story? This couple, the wife was having blood insufficiency. I think that's what it's called. There's another
Anemia.
term, anemia. That's the term that I was
Mm-hmm.
looking for. She was having anemia as growing up to a certain point that she almost lost her life. They went to the doctor and everything. Sometimes the places where we live in Africa, healthcare can be good, but there can be challenges, and sometimes you don't have what you need. So the doctor pointed them to these leaves. Again, typical Africa. We have every solution to every problem that is not
Yeah.
that you can think of, and sometimes we just don't turn our solutions into pills that we give people here.
Yeah.
So they pointed her to these green leaves that she just needed to grind and make water like juice out of it and drink. The lady started taking those leaves, and her whole anemia disappeared completely. It
Wow.
disappeared. And together as a couple, they started thinking, well, why aren't more people using this? And there are
Mm-hmm.
people every single day, every single year in Ghana that are dying of anemia. And these leaves are here, and nobody's doing anything about it. That's when they started taking those leaves and turning them into tea. They package them, they put them in bags, and like a regular tea that you can drink on a daily basis, pretty much like a food supplement or something like that. And I was so touched by that story to see how people took their own problem, they found the solution to their own problem, but they were like, no, we're not leaving the world. We won't let the world keep on dying because of just blood insufficiency or anemia. Let's take a solution. Let's take the solution that we found and make it into global solution. Now, I'll coin a term that Adam always uses: scale it up from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Going from this is how much it can help us, but this is how much it can help a lot of people. And their tea is now being sold almost in almost 5-6 states here in the United States. They won some awards in Turkey. And to me, I couldn't find a better example during this season of my life to define leadership as that the dynamism of changing things, of changing people, and of changing the status quo. So that was just the one example I really wanted to share today.
Yeah. And you just said what the leadership is. I will try to focus a little bit on what leadership is not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask many people, what do you think about leadership? How do you become a leader? Or what do you do to become a leader? The first picture image that comes, they think about their job.
Mm-hmm.
They think about, okay, the person right above me is my supervisor. My supervisor, in our team, we're like 16. So that means if I am at my supervisor's place, then I'm going to be my supervisor's boss or something.
Right.
Then I'm leading these 16 people.
Yeah.
So then I start defining that as like, hey, yeah, that's me. I'm going up.
Now you're a leader.
The next thing, okay.
Mm.
Then if you are like, a little bit more ambitious and you are like an engineer, for engineers, mostly people who you become like an account manager,
Mm-hmm.
then you become like a senior account manager. And then if you keep on climbing, maybe you become VP.
Mm-hmm.
Or after VP, then there's a couple of VP. And then maybe you can dream like you're gonna be 55 or 58 and you're gonna be the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the dream of most engineers who are out there in the industry.
Yep.
And if you ask people who is a leader, yeah, they will literally think of their boss. They will literally think of the person who they have to report to directly. While leadership is further from that. Of course, having a position puts you like a very good location for you to do something. But the position is not a destination. Leadership is not a destination. It's not a place where you can be. It's a process to get there. And for that process to be valid, you have to have people. You have to have people that you lead, and you have to have people that you bring into leadership as well. So leadership, it's not the position or the job that you're occupying. And this is I'm paraphrasing a lot, and I'm using a lot of my understanding of John C. Maxwell's ideas. It's not the position that you're occupying, or basically like or the projection of where you could be with your job. But leadership is simply put, he said, leadership is influence.
And that's the one
the
definition of leadership.
The ability to not just be able to speak, but there's this thing, right? We had a priest I went to Catholic school, so we have so many priest stories. We had a priest that hearing the sound of his shoes would just bring order to the place. He has not said a word. He has not yelled. In fact, he barely yelled. And he barely hit people. We had other priests who was were really tough with us, and we hit you or whatever. But this one was very particular. He doesn't yell. He doesn't hit you. We already knew the sound of his shoes. And as soon as his name was Abbe Dio, like Father Dio.
I think I know him.
As soon as Father Dio could walk, I am telling you the type of order that your class will become. It just, even if the professor could not handle the class, but my class was very unfortunate because our class was next to the office of Father Dio. So if there's so much noise in our class, we would just hear his shoes, like his boots walking, and the whole class will go quiet and in order, and everybody's focused. So that type of influence has a lot. I'm not saying that is leadership directly, because as I said, leadership is not a destination. Leadership is a process.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a trip you have to go into. So that already is a huge part of leadership.
And I think that the term there's two quotes I wrote down here from the first part, maybe to speak to what you just said. He said that the first thing that John Maxwell says, three things. The first one is that anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a captain to adjust its course. In terms of leadership, anybody can manage, but it takes a leader to adjust the course of a company or the course of history. Talking about people like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi. People that changed the course of history, or the Lord Jesus Christ, but what they did, something that they did. The other thing that Adam was talking to, that there's a quote here that summarizes that, is that leadership is not about advancing yourself, it's about advancing your team. And the third one, which I really like, one of the best quotes that I like about leadership, is that your success in leadership will not be judged by how far you go in life, but rather how far your team goes. And this was one of the ones that when I was reading the book, kind of the summary that I quoted this, and I thought to myself, as leaders, it's not about how many degrees you get. It's not about how many bonus check you get. It's not about all those stuff. It's not about where you get as a person, but it's about where you're leading your team. And the success or the failure of a leader is judged. If you want to know if a leader is successful or not, look at the followers. And I think we talked about this example before. John Maxwell was asking one of his mentors who used to flip hotels, and he asked him, he was like, "Oh, so you flip hotels that has a negative profit, turn it around and make it profitable, and then sell it. It's like, what is the first thing you do?" And he said, the gentleman said to him without thinking, he was like, "Oh, I fired the leader. That's the first thing I do when I get in there." And John Maxwell was kind of stunned. He's like, "Don't you think you need his help, like to help you understand how the company is working?" He said, "Well, if the company is not working in the first place, the leader is to blame." And that's what
Yeah.
I've always said. And I think it's very important when we talk about this, even when we look at churches, we look at non-profit organization, we look at countries, why are people blaming Joe Biden today? Can a president create inflation? Absolutely no. If you look at all the economic factors, this inflation was predicted somewhere. And I think Adam and I talked about this before
Yeah.
in the psychology of money. It was predicted somewhere in 2019 or 2018 when the psychology of money came out. And this guy already predicted, was like, in the next 2-3 years, we'll be in inflation. A president can't predict it, but right now, is the sole responsible person in power who has to make the decision, even if he's not the one who has to run the economy, even if he's not the one who has to run, the Central Bank of America or whatever, the federal bank, is still the one that people will look on and say it was your tenure in office a success or not, because he's the leader. The leader will take the credit, but the leader will also take the blame. And those are things that
Always.
sometimes we don't realize about leadership. We always look at the positive aspect of leadership, but never think about, okay, when things go wrong, you can blame everybody. There's a long time ago, and I don't know if I still want to go that route, but there's a position I wanted to get in at work. As Adam say, you want to advance your career.
Yeah.
The lowest I wanted to get in at work was to become a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. One of my mentors told me, a Chief Information Security Officer is a swinging door. Those people don't last more than 5 years in the company. Because as soon as there is a data breach in that company, the first person they fire is the Chief Information Security Officer, regardless of who created that in the company, even if he didn't know about the person, even if it was an honest mistake that someone made. As soon as the data of the people is exposed, that's the first person that they look on to fire. But why do they fire that person? Because you are the sole responsible person for everything that goes on in your company. And that's maybe on the downside of leadership, but which also leads you to like, hey, I am responsible, and what are the things that I should do? And that will lead us we give a summary of the 5 levels of leadership. And then in the next few weeks here, we start digesting them. We probably take one episode for each level. Some of them we probably talk about them within 2 episodes that we have. But the 5 levels of leadership, the 5 positions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the 5 levels of leadership. I'm just gonna take a little bit here.
Mm.
As it's like a ladder, and it's not the way he explains it so interesting. That this is not like a
5
this is
hours.
not this is not like a stair.
Mm.
Like whenever you climb one, you have to let go of the other.
Mm.
No, you and as I think I even take them not really as the way I was reading this book, I was not taking it as really levels.
Mm.
I could even rechange this to the 5 characters of a leader.
Mm-hmm.
This book, I could really reframe it in that aspect. Why? First, position. In this position, you say that people follow you because they have to.
And that's where a lot of people get stuck.
Yeah. So the second one is permission. People follow you because they want to.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is production. People follow you because of what you are bringing into the organization.
Mm-hmm.
The fifth is people development.
Mm.
People follow you in this instant because of what you're bringing to them, of who you are to them.
Which I think he calls reproduction.
Yeah, also reproduction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the top is pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
And the pinnacle here is people would follow you for who you are and what you represent.
Mm.
And those are kind of a breakdown or kind of a very, very summed up version of the 5 levels.
I like the way John Maxwell talks about them. If you acquire the book, there is actually the way I look at them, the way I remember them, every time I talk about them, is the 5P and 5 Rs. So the first P is position, the second one is permission, the third one is production, the fourth one is people development, which is pretty much reproduction, and the fifth one is pinnacle, the fifth level. And then position, the word that he uses there is rights, permission is relationships, which literally summarizes the way leadership works. The third one, when he talks about production, is results. The fourth one, people development, is reproduction, when you're reproducing yourself. And the fifth one, the pinnacle level that Adam talks about, is respect. Now, personally, when I first looked at this ladder of leadership, which characters or ladder or things that of leadership, I saw two things that people do. People get stuck on the position level, and most people get stuck on the production level, right? In companies, in a lot of companies, when you're talking about leadership, they first of all give you a title, which of course that's the best of leadership. They invite you into the company, and then out of the right away they want you to start producing results, right? If you're assigned to be the leader of this great company, or why not, what they are looking at is how much has this person done for the company? How much has this person done? And today, when we look at the world, when we judge our leaders, the people that we consider as leaders, when you're thinking about someone like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or you're thinking about Michael Jordan or Barack Obama or Donald Trump, when you look at all those names, in your head is like, what has this person done? We judge leaders by their production, right? But mostly, I think the greatest leaders that have ever been there actually pinnacle leaders. And the pinnacle leaders are pretty much leaders that produce leaders that produce leaders. It's like the grandfathers of leadership. These are people that the closest example I can think of today is, the Lord Jesus, or even every spiritual leader that's out there. It's like Jesus produced disciples, the 12 apostles that we know, that went ahead and produced more disciples, and their disciples are still producing disciples. And today we are still disciples that are producing disciples. And when someone get to that level, and Jesus maybe is high there, but then on a lower level, then you have like people even like Dr. Martin Luther King, where he believed in something. He had a dream. His famous speech, "I have a dream," but his dream was not just his dream. His dream becomes other people's dream, to a point where people are living Dr. King's dream as if it was their own dream, and they're taking the same dream, passing it on to other people, and that's where to me, that's what I consider as pinnacle. So on the 5 levels again, just to add a few notes here, put here on permission level. There's a quote that I wrote here that I like to read on permission and production, and then people development. On permission, I said the agenda of the leader on this level is not to preserve their position. When you talk about permission, it's getting to know their people and figure out how to get along with them. John Maxwell said that you can lead people. You cannot love. Wait.
He say you don't have. If I paraphrase, you don't have to like people
to lead them.
But you cannot lead people
without liking
them. Without liking them.
Yes, I think that's exactly what he said. It's hard for you to and okay. Let me just get down and then I'll come back.
Let me change that. Let me change that. Let me change that. He say you can like people without leading them,
Yes, that's the way.
but you cannot lead people without liking them.
Exactly. I think that's exactly how I said it. And then on the third level, production, it says on the production level, leaders gain influence and credibility, and people begin to follow them because of what they've done for the organization. That's when a lot of people, a lot of us, and that's one, I think, one mistake most companies make. Simply because the person is productive, they want to promote him to a leadership position. Not every productive person is called to be a leader. Some people are just good at what they do. Leave them there and let them produce at that level. You make them a leader of an organization, you will destroy the organization. I think if you read Patrick Lencioni, he actually Lencioni, I think that's how his name is said. He actually wrote a book about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And in that book, he gives exactly that example about one person that was promoted to a leadership position simply because the person was so good at what they were doing. When they got promoted to a leadership position, everybody in the department quit. And the department became unproductive. And the lady in that book, Patrick Lencioni, if you read his book, Lencioni, he has this way of teaching. He tells stories and then derives lessons from the stories. And one advice that John Maxwell gave a long time ago on communication, he says that, no, I think it was Zig Ziglar. He said that when you tell people stories and you tell the lessons in the story, people will remember the story, but they won't remember the lessons.
Yeah.
And after they remember the story, they remember the lessons. It's one strategy of communication. If you want to be effective at communication, try to paint pictures. I think one of the greatest communicators, Jesus again, he always told the lessons in parables because people could relate to the stories that he was telling, and therefore it was much easier for them to remember that. So the last one here on people development, the second to last one, but at least the one I have notes on here, it said leaders become great not because of their power, but because of the ability to empower others. And I think that's what I've always aspired to. Getting to a point where, as a leader, you're not just doing great things for your company or your organization, but when you leave, your organization strives and continues to do better. And the one thing I wanted to say, which I didn't want to lose, was I think one of the ways how you can test your level of influence or your level of leadership is working for a non-profit organization, working with volunteers. When someone when you sign someone's paycheck, they'll do whatever you tell them to do. Most people will do. I mean, if I know that my manager is responsible for my bonus, my yearly bonus, if she tells me, hey, work till midnight, I'll work till midnight. If my bonus is that important to me and I'm attached to that. But what if you're working with volunteers, with people that you, first of all, do not pay, secondly, are doing things because they want to do it, and they can quit on you whenever they want to quit. It doesn't mean anything to them. That's when I believe that sometimes you can judge the leadership of a person. How is that person influencing that? And of course, when you move organization, when you go from one place to another, your leadership changes and your ability to lead others changes. And John Maxwell talks about it. Your leadership Adam's leadership in Bora may not be the same leadership at UTD. The level of influence that he has in Bora may not be the same. And the same way that the level of influence that I may have with the young adult group in my church may not be the same, the level of influence that I will have with Bora. Because first of all, they do not know me. But if I go to Bora and Adam says, okay, from today on, Mark is the CIO of the company. First of all, everybody will respect me because of that. Because Adam has given me a title, and everybody's like, oh, that's Adam said he's the CIO, so he knows what he's doing, and he's probably very, very knowledgeable about it. But that's about it. That's about how much influence I can have. If I want to build a team at Bora, then I have to go again through all the 4 other levels of leadership.
Yeah, and I will say again, to me, these are characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is only one thing that can remain whenever everything else is completely gone. And that is character.
Mm-hmm.
If you have built it once to that certain level, even if it all comes down to the ground, you have this character and the skills to bring it back up to that same level. It's the only thing that retained whenever everything else is washed away.
Mm.
And that's how I see these levels
Mm.
of leadership.
And the other,
Why that?
go ahead.
Production.
Mm.
You can be very productive in one thing, in one position. And then, of course, if you have reached production in your leadership level, that's mean, of course, you have a position already, and you have a team of people who follow you, and because they want, of course. And then you have shown your level of productivity to those people, and it even help you gain more influence among them. But you can be switched to another location or another position.
Yep.
And when you are there, you start all over from zero, actually. Yes. You start from number one leader. Because they brought you there, you are number one. To those people that you are finding, you're a complete stranger. Like, I think my dad is the one who's going through this right now, and I think I have to actually have a conversation with him. My dad just got promoted, and he just got a really nice position where now he's leading a big chunk of the Congolese army. And he called me today, and he's complaining about people who work for him. It's like, man, I have these guys, like, they cannot write even reports. Can you imagine like a report that is not well written? Like, and I'm like, well, are they educated? It's like, man, I don't even know. I'm like, so I think the next time I call him, because I didn't have enough time to talk to him today, I barely call him, and I have to get better at that. I have to get better at calling, my folks back home. But yeah, he's just started going on and on about some of his, the people who work for him and so on. And so I think I should have a talk with him to tell him that, hey, you used to lead a certain organization.
Right.
Over here, you got to rebuild the same trust. Over here, you're just a position. And of course, it's the army. So in the army, everything is yes, sir. But it doesn't mean things are actually getting done the way you want them to get done. The only way you want them to be well done is if you have influence over those people. And influence starts with that. There's a lot of advice in this book that I think will be great in knowing those people.
That's right.
Like, one thing that I started at Bora is starting to have like a one-on-one conversation that is completely informal with the people that we work with at Bora.
And that's super important.
And yeah, so it's just that is the part of like building level 2 leadership.
And I think we get more into that.
We get really deep into it.
How you,
but it's just it's just creating that influence with people. That's, to me, I think it's so essential to leadership. You might not reach level 4 or level 5 of leadership, because to get to level 5 of leadership, you have to be actually naturally gifted. And this is not just naturally gifted by, I don't know, wisdom. Wisdom can be great.
You have to want it. You have to work for it. You have to aspire to it.
To get to the pinnacle, it's not. It's not just about. How can I put it? It's not just about influence that you're having. It's transcend all of those things, and it's about mission. When you're at that level, most people cannot reach that level. You can even be a CEO and you have done everything else at every other level, but you cannot get there. You have to be a naturally gifted person, and by naturally gifted, that means you have to actually be an excellent communicator for you to actually even make it there, because you are training. You are father of many, if I can say. That's how we put it in a very African word. You are a father of many. And when you are a father of many, you have to make sure that all the many people that you're a father of, they're coming out good.
Agreed.
And whenever you won't be there, they will be able to, they say in Lingala, that the flag will never fall down. Like, the flag will stand tall and high. So that is how I perceive the idea of level 5, level 5 of leadership. Of course, you can get to level 4 as soon as you start training other people into leadership.
Mhm.
As soon as you are mentoring, actually,
Mm.
when you're a leader and you can mentor other people
Mm.
to a level, you can show people, even on one-on-one level,
Mm.
you can show people how to lead or how to just basically be good at their job.
Mm.
That can bring you to a level 4 leader.
Exactly. And we talk more about that because a lot of us want aspire to get to pinnacle. A lot of us do not. A lot of us just want to lead our organizations better. And especially if you've just inherited a position, you've just got a promotion, and you feel like people aren't listening to you. Whatever idea you're trying to advance is not moving. You're having a hard time to get your team to work together, because that's one of the biggest challenge of leadership, is actually bringing everybody to work together, to look toward the same direction, to say, okay, listen, I don't agree with Adam on this point. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with his way of doing things, but I agree with the vision of the organization. And because I agree with the vision of the leader or the organization, I'm going to work with Adam, even if I don't agree with them, in order for us to go to where we want to go. And I think that's one of the biggest challenge about leadership. How do you get people to believe in your dream, in your mission, or to believe in the dream or the mission or the organization that you have? And especially I think the last 10 years I've been volunteering at church, as a media team leader, but also I've done some work with the young adults. And one of the biggest challenge, which I was writing down here in my note, the ultimate test of leadership to me is to lead without a title. When you don't have any former title, when they don't call you Mr. President, they don't call you anything. Like today when we're looking at President Obama, and we can see how much the man still has influence in politics today. He is not president, he's called former president or whatever, but his influence still lingers among African Americans, among the in the Democratic Party. And I give just that example because, Obama is kind of someone I've been looking up to. It's not leave alone the political stuff. The political stuff, that's that's something else. I can have a different opinion on that. But as a person, you can still see how his influence still lingers and still stays there. And can you lead like today for all of you who are in leadership position? If your leadership title was stripped from you today, can you still have influence on people? As a matter of fact, there's a story I read, I think must have been Jim Rohn that talked about that story, that there is a gentleman who had this fancy title in a company, and every time he was traveling and going somewhere, and don't quote me on that because I don't know if it's Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar. I listen a lot to those two gentlemen. So he said that he got to the company, he was going to a conference every year, like because he was like a president or something. He would have a car assigned to him. He will get to the hotel. They will have like detailed people assigned to him. And then at some point, the gentleman stepped down, but he said, I'm still going back to the same conference. He said he got in a conference and he sat down in a chair. Like people didn't even recognize him. People didn't even know who he was. And that's just how crazy this was in that organization. Of course, that organization need some better workers. But when he asked, he was like, oh, you don't recognize me? I am the guy who was this and that. Was like, oh yeah, that was the title. We served the title. We didn't serve the person. We served the title. And that's sometimes how influence works. So we got 8 minutes here to the top of the hour. I just want to get into some of the insight about the 5 levels of leadership. I'm not sure if we'll be able to finish all of them here in the next few minutes, but once we're done with that, in the next episode, we start with the first level of leadership position. We talk about the advantages of position, the disadvantages of position, and what are the best behaviors that you need to take when you're a positional leader. Like if you've got promoted to work when, as I just said before, or you've been given a position in a church or in a non-profit organization, or you've just joined the NASB and you're trying to find your way around, what are the things that you can do? So a few insight about, it gives 10 insight about the 5 levels of leadership. And I think we already talked about some of them, so we go through some of them quickly. He said you can move up a level, but never leave the previous one behind. And I think Adam talked about that. It's not that if you become a productional leader, then you start neglecting your relationships. It's not going to work. It's going to come back and bite you in the back. The second one is say that you are not, and Adam talked again about it, he inferred it. I think we've read this book too much that we kind of infer a lot of this stuff in our conversation. The second one is that you are not at the same level with every person. The type of influence that Adam has with me may not be the same type of influence that he has with with Plamedy. The type of influence that, again, I have with Adam may not be the same type of influence that I have with someone else or in another organization, even in unbounded growth in our little team. The type of influence we have on each other is completely different. And it's very important in your organization to know what type of influence do you have with this person. Have you reached the production level with this person, or are you still in the permission level? Has this person even given you the permission to lead them as a person? And you don't beg for it. You create that relationship. Leadership, I don't think leadership is given. Leadership is earned. That's why I say, you work for it. People, you need to get to point. Elon Musk, like I always say, it's not my role model. It's not someone I look up to, but I respect the guy. To me, Elon Musk is probably a level 5 leader, because the type of influence, the type of change he's creating in technology in this world is unmatched. You can hate the guy all you want, but you cannot deny the type of work.
And he's creating leaders who are creating more leaders.
He's creating leaders, and he's creating a whole philosophy, a whole type of thing. So you are not on the same level with every person. The third one, I like this one. It said the higher you go, the easier it is to lead. And it gives a little definition here. Limited influence equals limited leadership. Yeah. Greater influence equals greater leadership. If your influence is limited with people, it's hard for you to get those people to do something. As a matter of fact, one thing I've learned about leadership, some people are capable of doing something, but they are just going to sabotage your leadership simply because they don't have a relationship with you. Or simply because they're like, okay, I want that title, I want that position, and this person is not helping me getting it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sabotage it. As a matter of fact, John Maxwell talks about this story in his first church with the guy Cloud. He said, if you didn't get on the same page with Cloud, trust me, you were not going to lead in that church. And I think it's Robin Sharma that wrote that book, The Leader Who Had No Title. I read that book, and that was one of the most amazing books I've ever read. To me, if your title is stripped away and you stop being a leader, that means to me that you never went past the first level. The fourth insight he gives up here, he said the higher you go, the more time and commitment is required to win a level. There's no easy way to get to the top, and Adam just talked about this. And each time you go up, you pay. Nobody achieves anything great by giving the minimum. You just cannot. You can't be average.
You can be average, exactly.
You can be average. You just cannot.
That's actually, that's just, again, John Maxwell talked about average.
The 15 laws of
average.
growth.
Yeah, you cannot
be average and be a great leader.
When you're a leader, you have to be there 100%.
Yeah.
Or you are not there at all. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the biggest challenges of leadership. And that's why I believe also that leadership is protected by people you have influence on. Because those people look up to you. Mm-hmm. They're the people driving the organization when you're not there. And so you have to make sure that you build them up in such a way that an overall output of your team is not equal to average. Because that reflects so much on your leadership. When you have reached that level, when you're a productive leader, of course, you have inspired and empowered a group of people that can produce a lot of excellent results. You stop shooting for average. I'm reading a book, and it's probably one of the best books I've read. Actually, I recommend it to everyone. It's called The Goal. I don't know if Mark, you've read it.
No, I haven't read it. That's a good one.
So it's probably the best book in manufacturing, in the manufacturing industry. I'm taking a class on operations management this semester.
That's a great class.
And I love the class. I mean, I haven't.
It's a tough class.
We've only had like one lecture, but we haven't had another lecture.
It's a tough class, but it's a great
It's
class.
the first lecture only. But the professor said that we should read The Goal. And in The Goal, I'm really like all of these 5 levels of leadership. I'm experiencing that in it's a fiction book, but a fiction based on, it's teaching you basically how to manage an entire manufacturing facility, manufacturing plant. And what are the challenges that you would have at home when you're a leader at the organization, and how your personal life is affected? How, if your personal life affected, how is that affecting work and stuff? And I think that he call it the process of ongoing improvement. That's the subtitle of the book. It's probably in 2023. It's a huge book. No huge book.
Of course, it must be.
It's like it's 400 pages.
Wow,
No,
yeah, that's big. Yeah,
it's pretty big. But I'm almost done with the book, and we are talking about like 1 week. So I started last week doing after class, like last Tuesday, I believe. And and I think I should be done whenever this episode is being published. I'm finishing the book because I'm glued to the book right now. I cannot really get away. And it's a book that teaches you leadership at like, you know, a guy who was at a lower level. He was an industrial engineer who makes it out to the management. And whenever he get there, just to watch the leadership and watch how he take that leadership at home with his kids, and how, well, okay, of course, a lot of work affect your marriage. How does he rebuild back his marriage? All of that leadership, and I think it's a really great resource. You would see if you read John Maxwell, and you also read that, especially if you're into manufacturing. The Goal, it's a book that's like 30 years old, more than almost 40 years old now. So the first published was 1984. And
that's a long time ago, yeah.
International bestseller. And I have to thank the professor who suggested that. And of course, we are getting a grade for it. But at the same time, I think I'm going to keep reading that book.
Yep.
I'm going to read it and read it again and read it again until the concept, because the guy is explaining statistics in the dummy version. Not really dummy, but in a company, in real life.
You can understand it.
Yeah, in real life, what does that mean? What does it mean to give statistical fluctuations in real life? Like, you know, and he based it on very basic examples. So I think
absolutely. And we have a lot more time to talk about it. We already passed the hour here, so I'll take 4 more minutes of your time to finish up this insight, so that we can dive right into the first level in our next episode. So the fifth thing it says here that moving up levels occur slowly, but going down can happen quickly, and that's very true. That's very true. It's like, you know, one thing they say about trust is like it's gaining drops, but it's lost in leaders. Like when you gain trust, you gain it slowly. But when you lose trust, and we've seen that a lot of time with leaders that have been found themselves in scandals and things of that nature, how quickly they lose their influence. Then he said the higher you go, the greater the return. Then the seventh one, the last 3 ones, says that moving farther up requires further growth. And we talked about this in the 15 laws of growth. When you're in an organization, right? And you stop growing, you are pretty much stopping your organization from growing. And I think that's where it talks about it more in the eighth insight, that not climbing up the level limits you and your people. Like at this point here, Adam is the visioneer of Bora. He's envisioned Bora, right? And if Adam stops dreaming about Bora will stay at the level where Adam will stay. And if Adam doesn't grow past that level, Bora won't grow past that level. And that's for all of y'all entrepreneurs out there. You want your organization to grow? You want to become greater? You want your organization to become greater? You need to become greater. You need to continue improve on yourself. And one thing else I've learned about leadership, if you are under a leader who's not growing, guess what people do? They leave. If you're in an organization where you feel like you're stuck, you are no longer growing, you're no longer expressing yourself, guess what? People leave. And when you start seeing your greatest, the greatest people in your company leaving because they cannot grow, then there's something that you're not doing right. There's something that you need to improve. Maybe they're just not patient enough and all that, but that's something to keep in mind. The last 2 ones is that when you change position or organizations, you seldom stay at the same level. And Adam talked about this before. You can be in one organization where you're producing, and like the example he gave about his dad, Kinshasa, producing and doing all those great things, moving to a new place is like, what in the world is going here? And that's important to know. And the last one is that you cannot climb levels alone. That's one of the best sayings that I like about the two best things. Maybe Adam will tell that next time. It says that leadership, and this is C.W. Perry says, leadership is accepting people where they are, then taking them somewhere else.
Yeah,
You accept them where they are, as they are, and then you take them somewhere else.
it's a journey.
It's a journey. The second one is that if you think you are leading, but no one is following, then you're just taking a walk. That's
Yeah.
that's has
Yeah,
always
you're
been a
not on the
classic for
bus,
me.
you're not traveling.
That has always been a classic for me. Every time that I
Yeah.
see someone who claims to be a leader, but everything he does only influences him and him alone, then they're simply taking a walk. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's 5 minutes past our desired time, and I think we'll be ending with this today. And any closing remark?
No, I think yeah, it's a really great start that we have here, and I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Unbounded Growth. And yeah, the question is, are you leading or are you taking a walk? You should ask yourself that as you push yourself to grow into a leader, into the leader that you desire to be. And I hope everyone enjoys this episode and keep on tuning in. And we have really great stuff coming up for you all this year.
Absolutely. It's with that we'll be ending today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having stuck with us here for an hour and for listening to us again, to listening to Unbounded Growth. It was an amazing time with y'all. And again, as Adam said, we have a lot of things coming up this year. As we start talking about leadership, we have a lot of our leaders friends come on the Unbounded Growth to talk about their achievement, and we have a lot of great interviews with them. Remember that our friend Paul wrote the English on how to wrote a book on how to learn a language easily, and the book is now available in English on Amazon. We're talking about it next time, and we give you the link or the description link where you can download and buy the book. And if you learn, I'm trying to use the book to learn Spanish this year, and I think we all have an amazing time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with that we'll be ending today, and we'll be seeing you next Tuesday. Have an amazing day, and God bless you. Bye bye.